Good afternoon. Welcome to Inside Elgin. I'm your host, Mike Vecchio. Today's show, it's going to be a busy show. We're going to speak about, excuse me, Rare Disease Day. Today, February 29th, is Rare Disease Day across the globe. It's an annual awareness-raising event, and today marks the 5th International Rare Disease Day. On this day, hundreds of patient organizations from more than 40 countries worldwide are organizing awareness-raising activities converging around the slogan, Rare but Strong Together. Different activities will take place all across Europe, Russia, China, Japan, and of course the US and Canada, as well Australia and New Zealand. Today's show, we're going to speak to some special people from around the area that are dealing with rare diseases. First up is Mike Gouin. Mike is a Tillsonburg resident and has taken a young lady named Katie Keeping under his wing, so to speak, in raising funds for her battle with Battens disease. So Mike, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Mike, we've had you on before. You did a fundraiser down at the wharf in Port Stanley to raise some funds for Katie, and you shaved your head during that time too for $1,000. That was a job well done on that.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that on behalf of everybody in the community. Maybe tell us how you met Katie, how you came to become friends with the family.
Well, I knew a country singer, Double L, and he had done a benefit for her. So I seen her on his website, and I took a notion that I wanted to dig into more of what Battens disease was, and found out about Katie and decided I wanted to help her.
Okay. Now, Katie just turned 6 years old on February 15th.
Yes, February 15th.
Happy birthday, Miss Katie. I'm sure she'll see a copy of this. She's unfortunately not able to be here today. She just had an operation that we'll speak about in a minute. But maybe you can explain to our viewers what Battens disease is, Mike.
Battens disease is a neurological brain disease. It shuts down the body bit by bit. It starts off being clumsiness. They end up having seizures. Eventually they will become blind, bedridden, and eventually die from the disease.
Wow. Okay. And Katie's only 6. So this is the toughest question I have to ask, but what is the life expectancy of kids with Battens disease?
Well, she is 6 now. Her life expectancy is anywhere between 8 and 12 years of age.
Okay, so really not that much time left unless there's a cure. Are they doing research right now for kids?
They are doing research. Yep. They're doing some kind of experimental surgery in New York, which Katie had in June.
She did have that.
She did have this, where they implant genes into the brain to help cease the disease.
Okay, so not going to totally take it away, but you mentioned before the show that from the first time that you met Katie to now, big improvement. Not still 100%, but big improvement.
Big improvement from the first time I met Katie till now, yes.
Okay. Now, Katie just recently had a feeding tube called a G-tube inserted. Where was that done, Mike, and how is that going to help her out?
That was done in Children's Hospital in Toronto. What they did was they implanted the G-tube into the stomach, and she used to have it through the nose, which made it difficult because it kept plugging up. She'd pull it out all the time, and this here will help feed her a lot better and not disturb her as much as well.
Is that a permanent feeding tube there, Mike?
Yes, it is.
Sewn right into her belly, I guess.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, something the 6-year-old girl shouldn't probably have to have done, unfortunately. Right. How does Katie feel? You've met her before. How does she feel about this whole Battens disease situation that's going on around her?
She's unable to communicate in that way, so I'm not 100%. She seems like a very happy little girl. She, after this surgery that she had, I've seen a lot of pictures of her where she's laughing and giggling. Which was a big improvement from the times I've seen her.
Yeah, well, you know what? She is on Facebook. If anybody wants to find her, they can become friends with her. She's a beautiful little girl, full of vinegar, I guess. She looks happy about life. She just needs some of our help, and you are one of those people that are doing that. Thanks very much for everything you do, Mike.
Thank you very much.
All right, that was Mike Gouin. Next up, we'll speak to Jan and Al McBride, who had a grandson with another rare disease. We'll be back in a moment on Inside Elgin. Welcome back to Inside Elgin. Mike Vecchio sitting now with Jan and Al McBride of Eden, Ontario. They're a very special couple. I just met them before the show. Believe it or not, they've had 39 foster children through their home. Fantastic. That's great. And they also had a grandson named Chad who had spinal muscular atrophy, which I had not heard of. That would be one of the rare diseases that we're looking at today on Rare Disease Day. So Jan and Al, thanks very much for coming in and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us here.
Thanks for having us.
As I mentioned there, you had 39 foster children. That's fantastic. That is wonderful. You're really giving people to spend that much time raising children in our community. So thank you very much for all that. Now you had a boy and a girl on your own too.
Yes.
How did they feel about that many children coming through the household over the years?
By the time we actually started it, the youngest one was 13, and it was her suggestion.
Oh, is that right?
It was.
It was her best friend.
It was her best friend that
Yes.
needed somewhere to stay. And
It triggered the response to want to do more. So
Wonderful.
we just continued.
And now are you still fostering
No,
now?
we retired.
We retired.
Retired from fostering, and you just got back from down south. You look really healthy. I'm jealous.
She did.
Oh, she did. Al, you must have some other excuse for looking so good. Now let's speak about Chad for a while. Maybe give us a little bit of history on how old he was when he was diagnosed with SMA, and then how old he was when he passed, and then we'll go from there.
He was just a little over 3 months when we took him up to Sick Kids in London, and he was diagnosed there.
Okay.
And he was 5 months and 17 days when he passed away.
Okay, so just a wee little guy then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it about Chad that made you think something's not quite right with this little guy? We need to get him looked at. Was there something that stood right out to you?
Yes, he did not develop. He did not. When I had a granddaughter at the same age, and when you put the two of them together, the little girl, she was moving around, her hands were going, she was very observant, you could see growth in
Sure.
her.
Yeah.
With Chad, he just kind of laid,
Okay.
and his hands had an odd shape, and whenever we tried to move the hands they would just fall.
So there was no muscle,
There was no muscle.
tone or anything in it. It
No.
was just they were limp and weak, I guess. Now, Mom and Dad, is this a hereditary disease?
Yes.
Yeah. So now explain this. We were talking about it before the show. There are 4 different types of SMA, spinal muscular atrophy, and each parent must be a carrier
Right.
of the exact same gene in order
Yes.
for the children to get it. And unfortunately, both parents did
Right.
in this case. Had you ever heard of SMA prior to Chad
No.
being diagnosed with it?
No,
No.
no, we had no knowledge of it.
And there's nothing that they can do?
Not for SMA1, no,
Not at all.
no.
So is there a way to make him more comfortable? Was it a painful time for him then without
With these nerves, the central nervous system dying off, the pain would be lessened. There wouldn't be any pain, but also there would be no movement, there would be no, he got to the point where he couldn't eat, he couldn't breathe, he couldn't, and it was very tough for the family just to watch him lay there and die.
Yeah. Now he would have been on feeding tubes and
Yes.
on breathing ventilation and all that stuff. Was the decision have to be made to take him off that, or was it just his body was shutting down regardless?
His body
of-
was shutting down.
Yeah, his body was shutting down, but at the last day, it was more or less like a decision to make, because they've been going through like every couple hours, reviving him, and finally the doctors and the nurses just came to us and our son and daughter-in-law and just said, like, we just, we got to kind of stop doing this and kind of let him go.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the decision was made, and that's what happened. We just let him go. So.
And here we are on Rare Disease Day, the 5th annual. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, folks, can you stick around? I'd like to talk to you a little bit more for the next
Yes.
segment. We'll have Jan and Al back, McBride back, right after the break here on Inside Elgin in just a moment. Welcome back to the program. I'm sitting with Jan and Al McBride from Eden, Ontario, and today is Rare Disease Day, International Rare Disease Day. Internationally, that means all across the globe. And here in Elgin County, we're talking to a few families, a few people here who have dealt with various rare diseases. Jan and Al had a grandson named Chad who passed away at 5 months and 17 days old in November of 1999 from spinal muscular atrophy. And I have to admit, I'd not heard of SMA prior to you folks coming in here. I guess that's why it is a rare disease. Let's talk about the hereditary aspects of it. We were speaking during the break, Al and Jan. What is the process if each parent is a carrier of this particular gene? They have to have, there's 4 types, they have to have the exact same type of gene. What are the odds of that happening in this area?
It's approximately 1 in every 6 to 10,000 children will be affected by SMA, and it just depends as to what level they're going to take and get, what regenerative gene they actually have.
Okay.
And then if their parents are the same with the same regenerative gene, well then usually it's a little bit worse than what it normally can be with it. So,
is there any way in utero that they can tell that the child might possibly have this disease?
yes, on our son and daughter-in-law's second child that they had one about 3 years later than what Chad was. His name is Matthew Cole. While he was still in the womb, they went in to Hamilton, and the geneticist did an in vitro check onto it, and then they went through and found that he is not a carrier and he does not have the gene whatsoever. So,
well, that's excellent news.
Yes.
And so Matthew's doing fine now, healthy,
Yes.
and yeah,
yep, he's a healthy little 9-year-old. Yeah.
awesome.
10.
Were they 10?
Sorry.
Thanks, Grandma. Grandpa's. We tend to forget because we're men sometimes.
Yes.
But yeah, that's okay. That's our excuse.
Yep, we'll stick with that.
Now, does he? Are there other children in the family as well, or is Matthew the only child that your kids have now?
As far as Mark and Kathy are concerned, Matthew is the only one.
Okay.
Kathy has 2 children from a previous marriage, and neither one of them are.
Neither of them did.
No.
But her first husband would have had to have the
Yes.
Exactly.
You would have had that
As well.
regenerative gene.
Yes.
in there.
Motor neuron.
Is it an expensive thing for parents to go and get tested for issues in their genetics prior to creating children?
That I don't know, because all of the testing was done on Mark and Kathy after
Okay.
Chad was diagnosed with it, and they had to find out who were the carriers and
Okay.
to what degree. And when they discovered they both had the same carrier, they were both the same carriers of SMA1, then they knew that
And
Chad
it's
wasn't
a
going to
long
make
process too, because I mean,
It is.
it's done with a geneticist, and I know that the geneticist that they had was down in Hamilton,
Right.
and it took quite a while, several months before they got it back. And I don't think that OHIP paid for everything, but I know that the SMA Society, the association that helps out with that, helps the parents out. I know that they help cover off some of the costs for that. So,
Okay. Thanks very much. We're out of time right now, Jan and Al, but thanks for coming in and talking about Chad.
Thanks
with
for having
today.
us.
Thanks
All right.
for having us.
When we come back, we'll speak to Natalie and Tatum Blackwell on Rare Disease Day on Inside Elgin. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside Elgin. I'm now sitting with Natalie and Tatum Blackwell from St. Thomas, Ontario. Tatum, I've known about for a long, long time, and Natalie and I have been friends, and we decided to have them on the show today, being Rare Disease Day, and we're going to talk a little bit about EB, also known as recessive dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa. Mouthful.
Very good.
But in layman's terms, Natalie, Tatum, welcome to the show, first of all. Thanks for coming on, honey. All right. Natalie, can you tell us what EB is and how it affects Tatum?
Absolutely. EB is a very rare genetic skin disease. Basically, what it is the layers of skin do not adhere properly.
Okay.
So Tatum's skin will blister and tear off very easily, either from a slight rub, friction, or even spontaneously.
Really? Just without anything happening to it, or just you get a blister or something happens?
You've got it.
So Tatum, how do you feel about having this EB? You okay? Like you like going to school and everything like that? Yeah? And you can handle it? Yeah. Do you have to do anything special? Is there anything that you can't do because of that? Or do you have to be careful doing certain things? Yeah? Like what? Do you know?
Soccer and basketball.
Yeah. So if you get bumped by one of the other kids or something, you have to be very careful there. Yeah. Well, that's good. Now, which school do you go to?
Pierre Elliott Trudeau.
Pierre Elliott Trudeau. I noticed you were reading a pretty cool book before the show, and you had a French bookmark on there. You look like you're a pretty good student, are you? Are you a good student? Yeah, good stuff. Good for you. Now, Natalie, how old was Tatum when you started thinking that something might not quite be right with her skin and the issues going on?
At birth.
At birth, right away?
Absolutely. Tatum was born, and she had both feet missing very large areas of skin, up one shin and on the small of her back as well. So the doctors right away knew that there was something wrong. They told me, there's something wrong with your daughter and we just don't know what it is.
Okay. How common is this, or how rare is this disease in numbers of like 1 in 10,000, 1 in 100,000?
Well, EB has 4 different types and some subtypes as well. And they say in the EB National Registry in the States anyways, they say that for every million live birth, there's 1 case of EB. So I guess for Canada, that would kind of translate to about 1,600 cases in Canada of all the varying degrees of it.
Wow.
Now the recessive dystrophic being one of the most severe types.
Okay. So what kind of special treatment or special care does Tatum require on a day-to-day basis?
Well, day-to-day is wound care. We've been doing that since the day she was born. We address her wounds, change bandages. We do that every single morning. Okay. Sometimes 10 minutes later because the bandages fall off. Exactly. Yeah. We do it every evening as well, certainly before bed. And during the day at school, Tatum has an EA that will also assist her throughout the day just to maybe freshen up some of the bandages, or, you know, as you move along throughout the day, things just kind of get dislodged, I guess. So
are there any times at all where Tatum's skin is clear of any issues, or is it pretty much an ongoing thing that you're always going to have to deal with?
Constant. There are some wounds that are chronic wounds. They might leave for a couple of days. For example, even around her neck, you know, she might get some relief through the neck, and but it might last a few days. Some of the things that we do find that's really helpful for Tatum is, for example, she has a swim spa. So being in the salt water is really helpful because it does help to clear up and dry up her wounds. But it's just as how often that she can get in there and to keep that up. But basically, she'd have to be in there every day so that she can get that clear up.
Hanging out in the pool all day long.
Not a bad place to be.
Call me up. I'll come over with you. We'll hang out in the saltwater pool. All right. Now, is there some research going on right now, Natalie, on hopefully to find a cure for this disease?
There is active research because unfortunately there is no cure. There's absolutely no treatment other than wound care.
Whatever you do yourself at home.
You've got it.
Wow.
But through various countries, I believe there's something going on there is something going on in Minnesota. I do believe they're going to be starting something in Toronto. Tatum goes to Sick Kids in Toronto. It's where her dermatologist is, and so a few things around the world going on, all kind of actively working at it. But again, being a rare disease, it's so hard because when people don't know about the disease, there's not as much funding going on, which makes research very difficult. Okay.
Well, if you can stick around for the next few minutes, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about groups and support from other parents with the same issue. Okay?
Absolutely.
We'll be right back with the beautiful Tatum Blackwell and her mom, Natalie, in just a moment. Welcome back to Inside Elgin. I'm sitting with Natalie and Tatum Blackwell. And before the break, Natalie, we were asking about, or I was asking, because it's just me here, I was asking about support groups for parents and for the kids themselves that do have EB. Are there any support groups around our area that you can go and lean on a little bit for some support?
Absolutely. There's an organization called Deborah Canada, and Deborah Canada is a research organization that helps with various fundings, but also getting families connected. And I'm very happy to be able to share Tatum's experiences, our experiences with other families, because actually just recently they put me in touch with a mom whose little guy was 8 months old, I think, has the same type of EB, and we were on the phone for I think 2 hours with that mom. Wow. She was just going through so many different questions. She was up, I think, in the Barrie area, and I just remembered how much that meant to me when Tatum was a little baby, to be able to touch base a little bit and get some information, and so
bounce some ideas off other people. How do you deal with this? And exactly. So Tatum, you've met other little kids then that have EB as well. Do you remember any? Not really?
She did a long time ago when she was about 4.
Oh, who remembers that? So long ago, right? Yeah, good stuff. Well, you know what? We loved having you on here, Tatum. You're a beauty little girl, and anytime you want to come back and talk about EB or anything else that's going on in your life, you're more than welcome to come back, okay? All right, Natalie, thanks very much for coming on today.
Thank
Tatum,
you so much.
Thank you. All right, you have a great rest of the day today, okay? All right, that was Natalie and Tatum Blackwell from St. Thomas. It's Rare Disease Day here in Canada. Do a little research. It's out there. We need to do as much as we can to help these kids out with the rare diseases. We've done our part here on Inside Elgin. You go do yours. Thanks very much for watching today, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.
Inside Elgin set provided by Jennings.